Tim Mckibbin is the head of the Real Estate Institute in New South Wales. He's the CEO. Tim, great to have you on the show. I'm keen to talk, if I can, both about commercial real estate, tenant and landlord, and residential real estate. Let's start with the residential. We know that there's been legislation passed in New South Wales. There's certainly been a lot of commentary at a national level about letting renters avoid being evicted for a 6-month period if they're unable to pay their rent. Is that a uniform policy that all agents are adopting?
So the legislation that you're talking about has gone through, but all that has created is the ability for the minister to be able to invoke those powers to bring about that moratorium and a series of other things if the minister so chooses. But at this stage, the minister hasn't gone down that path. But in relation to rental, be it commercial or be it residential, I think that the problem that we're facing is that we have somebody who was in financial stress. We have the tenant who is in difficult times. And then to solve that problem, we then say to the tenant that there isn't a requirement for the tenant to pay their rent, be it commercial or residential. And all you're really doing then is passing those financial difficulties from the tenant to the landlord. So you haven't gotten rid of the financial difficulties, you just moved them from one party to another.
Yeah, let me just jump in there. As I understand it, the whole discussion has been that if the tenant needs to, they've lost their job, they get this 6-month rental holiday, commercial and residential. What happens at the end of that 6 months? Do they have to somehow, over a period of time, pay back that missing 6 months worth of rent? Or does it mean they just go back to their normal rent and they keep paying it on and it's like they haven't had to pay rent for 6 months?
Well, it's a great question, one which I don't have an answer to. I'm hoping this week that government will give us a few more details because there is a great deal of uncertainty out there. We've had people who have seen the opportunity to negotiate in the residential environment, at least, have seen the opportunity to negotiate their rent downwards based on what they've understood from what is coming. But at this stage, as I said a second ago, the minister hasn't yet decided what it's going to look like, what the benefits or the moratorium, I suppose, is going to look like, how it's all going to work. So at this
whether
stage,
it's a true rental holiday, whether it's just a true rental holiday or whether it's, you catch up down the track. Interestingly, when politicians have been pushed on this issue, Tim, they've said, well, the landlord can go to the bank and they can get themselves 6 months mortgage holiday. But of course, the banks won't give you 6 months off your mortgage. They'll just stop you having to pay it for 6 months. It'll eventually be pushed back into your capital. You'll be paying for it longer term. It'll be another 6 months on your loan. And the worry, I think, for a lot of self-funded retirees who have already had their investment profile, money that's in banks or on the share market, halved in recent weeks out of this crisis, if they were living off the money that the tenant was paying them for the property, they're really hard up now.
100%. And you're right about the banks. That's exactly what the banks have in mind. They're saying that you don't have to make the repayment. However, the interest will keep ticking along and will just extend your payment out there that much longer to recover it. So there's no gain whatsoever for the landlord. I think the other thing that is worthwhile understanding here is that the landlord is an investor. They are no different to any other investor that we have in our community, and they've gone into rental property, be it commercial or residential, to make a return, to have that security of money coming to them to support their own lifestyle. And now that that's been threatened, they have problems as well. Now, the other great assumption I think that is being made here is that all landlords are extremely rich. We know that's not true. Anyone who followed the election, we know that's not true with the whole issue, about investor loans and some of the Labor policies at the time. Just quickly though, on that issue, whether you're on the dole, and the dole is enhanced at the moment, the New Start allowance, or whether you're on this now new job keeper payment, every Australian who finds themselves without work or diminished hours will have an income coming in.
But the landlord that relies, and I'm talking about the small-time landlord here, I'm not talking about the conglomerates, the small-time landlord that relies on that income to live, there's no other option for them, particularly if they're self-funded retirees. So this is the vexed question. And then before you go, I want to ask you about commercial landlords. I'm hearing lots of different stories, particularly in relation to some of the big proprietors. They are not giving much rent relief to some of the small businesses that are in these big shopping centres.
Yeah, and again, we're still waiting on the details of all of that. But what I can share you from conversations I'm having constantly with agents out in the field, that they are doing compassionate negotiations with their tenants, and they're doing that on commercial grounds because people have good tenants. They've always been good tenants. They've always paid their rent, looked after the property, etc. And through no fault of their own, they've had this forced on them. So the landlords are saying to themselves, how can I help this person through this tough time and then get them back to where they were happy, I was happy, and we had a good commercial relationship. So I know a lot of this is going on as we speak.
All right, just before we go, do people ring their landlord? I mean, most wouldn't know them. They'd obviously know their agent, though. Is that your recommendation, that if you're in this position, either as a renter of a commercial property or residential property, do you want people to ring their agent and start this process?
Well, you do if somebody is in genuine need of assistance. I think that's true. But there are, particularly in the residential area, there are a few people who have decided to see the opportunity of having a rent reduction, or in a couple of instances I've seen just said, I'm not paying the rent at all. Now, you know, that's not helpful for anybody.
No, as the PM says, we're all in it together. Tim Mckibbin, thanks very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.